Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. The Supreme Court recently agreed to hear a new case called City of Grants Pass versus Johnson. And the question that it asks is whether enforcing laws against camping on public property could constitute cruel and unusual punishment prohibited by the Eighth Amendment. And if that seems like a bit of an odd question, Alicia, let me throw that back to you since I know you've looked closely at this case. How do we get to a point where public camping is required by the Constitution?
Yeah, I'm still kind of scratching my head at this. And I think even all the progressive politicians in California and the West Coast are as well. The Ninth Circuit, which is known to be the most liberal circuit in the country and kind of has jurisdiction over most of the Western states, ruled actually first in 2018 that there was, under the Eighth Amendment's prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment, that cities couldn't arrest or essentially impose punishments on homeless people for camping or lying or sitting or whatever on public property as long as there aren't enough shelter beds for every vagrant, which is basically the case anywhere you go. So even if, let's say, San Francisco were to offer shelter to someone in the Tenderloin district who's camped out with hundreds of other homeless people, and they refuse, they can't actually forcibly remove them because the city in itself doesn't have enough shelter beds to house every single person who's on the street. And the problem, of course, is that these places keep on attracting more homeless people. So you can continue to build more homeless shelters, but it's like an open sieve, right? It just, they can't keep up with I wouldn't really call it demand, but you will never be able to house all the homeless people out there. And this is a problem for a lot of the cities. But the Ninth Circuit ruling, again, a first one was in 2018, and then there was another case that came up involving an Oregon town in 2022, the Oregon town of Grants Pass, where it essentially reinforced this ruling. And that has tied the hands of a lot of cities around the West Coast. I mean, San Francisco filed an amicus brief in this case, but as did many others and states. Gavin Newsom himself actually filed an amicus brief and saying, what's up? How is it a violation of the Eighth Amendment to actually just help these people, clear them out from places, public property, but also, like right in front of business sidewalks and all that? How is that a violation of the Eighth Amendment? Again, there's no constitutional basis for this. I mean, there were very animated dissents when the court considered the question en banc last year. I think almost nearly half of the Ninth Circuit actually dissented, but there weren't enough, again, because the progressives still dominated. And so there's the cert appeal to the Supreme Court to maybe actually impose some reason here and throw out this kind of radical conception. I mean, this goes beyond a penumbra of the Eighth Amendment.
When the Supreme Court hears this case, the law obviously is at the forefront. And one of the dissenting judges in the Ninth Circuit says that this idea has no basis in the Constitution or our precedent. And so expect to hear a lot of arguments about what the Eighth Amendment really covers and that it does not cover this. But on the policy, Kim, the Journal's editorial on the Supreme Court's taking of this case also makes the argument that these are useful laws and this enforcement power is useful because it can help get homeless people into treatment or into shelters. If you are camping on the street because you have a drug addiction and you don't want to go into a shelter because they won't let you feed that drug addiction, then the enforcement of this law is a way, to maintain the public order that other residents of that city deserve and ought to have just as a matter of being citizens of the United States and residents of whatever town they're living in. And B, the enforcement allows the city to get that person who needs some sort of drug treatment into that treatment, even if they don't want to voluntarily go.
Yes, let's talk about the words cruel and unusual. I mean, who exactly is being cruel and unusual here? The citizens and the officials in many of these cities that have come to realize, I think too slowly, by the way, that this experiment in free living and everyone, even those who have drug issues and mental health issues, should just be able to live any way they want, including in the middle of the street, is not working, by the way, not just for communities, but for those who are in need of help. And as that judge noted, Judge Patrick Bumate, who was the one who filed the dissent, there is nothing in the text or the history of the tradition of the Eighth Amendment that anywhere comes near this notion that you can't have anti-vagrancy laws, which, by the way, are among some of the oldest local laws you'll find on books, anti-vagrancy, anti-loitering. But he also noted your point, Kyle, that the decision itself is cruel because it makes it impossible not only for citizens to enforce their own health and safety laws, but because it makes it impossible for these people to get help. And we all have become more aware in our modern day and age, which is great, about how easy it is for people to end up with drug abuse problems, how commonplace mental illness is in various different cases and forms, and that we have the ability to help people, but you can't if the belief is that they should just be able to remain treatment and help free, and that indeed the law prohibits you from intervening in any way to offer that kind of help. So I am glad to see the Supreme Court take up this case on the legal grounds, obviously, because the Ninth Circuit judges here literally come across as insane with this particular ruling, and it needs to be sorted out. But from a compassion point of view, we have a major homeless and vagrancy crisis in many cities in the country. And the sooner we're able to get to work trying to fix that and help the people for whom this is happening to, the better.
Thank you, Kim and Alicia. Thank you all for listening. You can email us at pwpodcast@wsj.com. If you like the show, please hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back next week with another edition of Potomac Watch.